Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Glad to have you with me this morning. And wow, we've got plenty to talk about today. I want to continue first in this discussion we had yesterday about cult-like thinking, cult-like behavior. And as I was explaining, it's interesting. The left is accusing those who are supporting Donald Trump of being part of a cult. I kind of responded to that yesterday, which is just complete nonsense. Our support for Donald Trump is very rational. We base it upon his record, what he accomplished for us. I don't have any doubt that there are probably some people who are kind of mesmerized and all of that, because that just happens in life. There are people who kind of go overboard with it. I'm not a cult follower of Donald Trump. I support Donald Trump because I believe Donald Trump did a tremendous job for the first 4 years as president, and I believe he'll do a tremendous job for another 4 years as president, and it just goes no further than that because he's a human being with all the same imperfections that you and I and everybody else have. But I really believe that he is God's man for this moment in our country. I believe that with all my heart. He'll pass from the scene just like every other human being comes and goes, but I hope that he will save us at least in this most immediate emergency we are in, so that we can go on ultimately to turn the country around spiritually and culturally. So, but that's the accusation that is made against us, that we supporters of Donald Trump are part of a cult. But I explained what those factors and what those qualities are. A cult denies reality as we know it to be. It denies rationality. It makes an enemy of anybody who does not buy into the unreality, or anybody who questions the unreality. It makes that person an enemy. It divorces itself from all other ways of thinking and people and thoughts. It separates itself from those people, though, because those people obviously become the enemy, and that it ultimately leads to self-destruction and destruction of others. Support for Donald Trump, as far as I can tell, doesn't create any of that, any of those scenarios. But the things I've described for you as part of this cult-like behavior of the left do indeed produce these kinds of results. There's some things I didn't hit yesterday that I want to hit today, and then I want to go on and extrapolate from that discussion and go on into something else, which I think you'll find very interesting and I think is extremely important. I didn't really cover the cult of this whole gender confusion, but just, again, think about the unreality and the irrationality of it. You're told to believe prima facie, without any kind of scientific, or for that matter, psychological explanation for this, that a person can be born in the wrong body. Now on its face, that makes no sense. The person. Well, who is the person? Because these are people who don't believe in God. They don't believe that we are spirit, soul, and body. So who is the person who is born into this wrong body? I mean, what is it, a male spirit accidentally placed into a female body, or vice versa? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, but we're expected to believe that, okay? But furthermore, we are expected to believe more irrational things like, well, you can be, like Bruce Jenner claims to be, for example, you can be have a guy's body, a man's body, but you're a woman. But as a woman, you like other women. In other words, you are sexually attracted to other women. So I don't know whether that makes you some kind of lesbian, gender confused person, but get this, because I don't know whether Bruce Jenner has had the old clippers put to him or not, but you want to have intimate relations with a woman, apparently the way a man does, but you are not a man, you're a woman. I mean, again, it makes no sense whatsoever. But if you question it, you are a transphobe. I mean, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with that. There's something wrong with you. And you're expected to buy into this unreality, this irrational thinking, without any questions, without any objections. And if you don't, you become persona non grata. So, for example, you got to use the right pronouns. Say, I refuse to call him Bruce, anything but Bruce. And I refuse to call William Thomas, Thomas or Thompson? William Thomas, I guess it is. I refuse to call him anything but William or Bill. I'm not calling him by some woman's name. He's a guy. I'm not doing that. I'm not playing that game. It's a lie. And I'm not buying into it. But see, you are a right-wing extremist. I mean, teachers have been fired from their jobs because they won't call a girl by a guy's pronoun and won't call a guy by a girl's pronoun just because they say, "Oh, I was born in the wrong body. My doctor made the wrong guess. My parents made the wrong guess." I mean, this stuff is completely irrational. Okay, so that's cult-like thinking. I likened it to Jehovah's Witnesses, and if I let my child have a blood transfusion, my child will be lost for all of eternity. I mean, what? So better that my child die than have a blood transfusion. Whew. And if you as a parent won't let your child have hormones and operations and all of this, you are a bad parent. We're going to take your child from you because you are a bad parent. I mean, it doesn't make a bit of sense, not to mention that parents have ultimate authority over the rearing of their children, not the state anyway. I mean, that's a basic tenet of liberty, of freedom. But, oh, no, not in their warped view of the world. In their warped view of the world, any parent who won't let your son have his genitalia cut off because he happens to be experiencing some gender confusion, or won't let your teenage daughter have her breast cut off because she's experiencing some gender confusion, makes you a bad parent. You're killing your child, and we the state are gonna save the child by mutilating the child's body. What happens when the child is 18, 19, 20, 25, and they look back and, oh, well, too bad. Because we are superior beings and we know we did the right thing, even if it leads to horrible tragedy. We know we did the right thing. See, that's a cult. Now, I didn't mention also the life issue, killing of unborn babies. I mean, think about this. They denied that the baby, alive and kicking and moving and growing in the mother's womb, in the uterus, technically, but in the mother's womb is life. Well, again, it's just the complete denial of reality. Of course it's life. And then they go further and say, well, but it's not a human being. Well, then what is it? And as I've said, I raised the question, okay, well, at what point does it become a human being? And what's the criteria? What are the criteria that you use to make that determination? Well, they can't answer that question because they don't want to. Because they want the right to kill the unborn baby up until the moment it's born. And then, of course, if the baby was intended to be aborted, they want the right to let the baby die even after it's born, even though it's alive when born. They want the right to let the baby die. So it's clear this is a death cult. And it has nothing to do with science. It has nothing to do with rationality. It has nothing to do with reality. So you pose the question, well, well, at what point does it become human? Well, it becomes human when it can live on its own outside the mother's womb. So then before the umbilical cord is cut, then it's still not human. You can still kill it. Because until the umbilical cord is cut, the baby can't live on its own. The baby is still feeding off the mother. So again, that doesn't make any sense. That's not rational. And by the way, even after the umbilical cord is cut, the baby can't live on its own. outside its mother's womb. It can't live on its own. If you just left the baby, they say, oh, you're born now. Go to it. The baby would lay there and die. And get this. If a woman wants to have the child, she's having a baby. If the woman has been persuaded by the death cult Planned Parenthood and all of these baby killing mechanisms around her that she doesn't want to have her baby, then it's not a baby. So reality changes based upon what the person wants, not based upon the scientific reality of what's actually going on. You know, I really believe that the Lord gave me this, and you can make this, you can judge for yourself. But I really believe the Lord gave me this. This is one of the reasons why YouTube and Facebook and all that, they want to censor me. They want to keep my communications from growing and reaching larger audiences because I believe that when they listen to someone like me, I mean, when YouTube denied my monetization, they said they used technology to review it and then human review as well. Well, when those human beings review my teachings and my messages, I guarantee you they come under conviction. I was saying on Sunday, every human being has within their conscience the knowledge of right and wrong, and they have to suppress that. They have to sear that with a hot iron. They have to callous over that in order to avoid guilt and remorse for what they're doing. And these people in these abortuaries killing these unborn babies, they know what they're doing is wrong in their heart of hearts, but they have to steel themselves against it so they can go home at night and drink enough alcohol or smoke enough pot or do enough cocaine or whatever it is they have to do in order to assuage that guilt, in order not to confront their own sense of guilt. They know. So what the Lord shared with me, said to me was, if you really believe that killing an unborn baby doesn't matter, that there's no life there, that it's not human, that you are not doing anything wrong. If you really believe that, then you ought to commit suicide. I mean, if you're going to be logically consistent, because what you really mean is that your life doesn't matter. If it would have been okay to snuff you out while you were developing in your mother's womb, well, why isn't it okay to snuff you out now? I mean, for you to snuff yourself out now. I'm not recommending suicide to anybody or trying to advocate anybody committing suicide. I know all of you who follow me understand that. I abhor suicide. It is a terrible sin. I'm not in any way trying to suggest that, although the left will certainly jump on it and right-wing watching these people. Oh, E.W. Jackson was on telling people to commit suicide. I'm making a logical point. If you really believe that you are the product of a process that you came through in which you were not human, and you cannot identify the moment at which you became human, I mean, I would assume an adult would believe they're human now, but it really means that your life is just meaningless. It's just a happenstance. And what I'm saying, by the way, is exactly what the existentialists taught, is exactly what they taught. They told people life is meaningless anyway, no big deal. Live, die, commit suicide, it doesn't matter. Now, of course, I have a biblical and Judeo-Christian worldview, and it does matter to me. All I'm pointing out is the logical absurdity of that position, that killing an unborn baby doesn't matter. Then killing you wouldn't have mattered. Well, if it wouldn't have mattered then, well, why does it matter now? Think about that one. But I really believe that's hot off the Holy Ghost presses. Of course, again, I don't want anybody committing suicide. I'm pointing out the logical absurdity of asserting the position that there was a time in your life when you were not human, and then not being able to identify the moment at which you became human. Because it's another way of saying your life is really a meaningless glob. And again, that may sound, wow, that's really way out there. But Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, all the existentialists, that's exactly what they believed. That your life is absolutely, unequivocally meaningless, and whether you live or die doesn't matter. Well, that's exactly the position behind killing unborn babies, isn't it? Right, that their lives really don't matter, that they're not life, that they're not human, that there is no meaning there. Well, if there's no meaning there, well, why is there meaning now? Okay, I want to come to another cult-like framework in which we see cult-like thinking in operation on the issue of race. On the issue of race, it is our country has fallen into an abyss of cult-like thinking on the issue of race. And the thing that brought this to mind most recently, of course, you can, my goodness gracious, it's just so, it's so obvious. But this whole Fani Willis scandal, where she's paying her boyfriend hundreds of thousands of dollars, he's taking her on these very expensive vacations. She claims she's reimbursing him with cash, but there's no trail of the cash actually having been paid back. So it really seems like she's getting a kickback in the form of these expensive vacations, and who knows what other form. Since she keeps a lot of cash around, who knows what other form. If you can't trust her to be truthful about that, why would we trust her to be truthful about anything? But she goes to churches, I think she's gone to her second church now, and gets awards. I don't know what for exactly, but she gets awards. Now, she's being given an award for one thing. It's not for integrity. It's not for honor. It's not for competence or capability or achievement. She's getting an award for being black. That's all. She's getting an award for being black. For being black and being scrutinized as a high-level public official for the behavior that she's engaged in, some of which seems to involve the misappropriation of public funds. But no. She should be rewarded. Why? Because she's black. I mean, it is, again, it denies reality. Stephen A. Smith apparently got very, very upset. Of course, I used to have some respect for Stephen A. Smith. I've lost what little respect I had for him because I thought that Stephen A. Smith at least tried to be an honest broker on these things. But Stephen A. Smith is just another race cult man. That's all. He's just another race cult man. Because people have said, and I've said the same thing, this is what you get. And by the way, she's a George Soros prosecutor. But this is what you get when you choose people on the basis of their skin color rather than the basis of their competence and their capability. Because it was clear on the stand, it was clear from her demeanor, this woman is a complete incompetent. She's bringing one of the most complex cases that could ever be brought, a RICO case, against a president based upon some statement that he made during the Georgia election in terms of finding votes, which, depending on how you interpret that, could be completely innocuous, completely honest and innocent. You know, in fact, I know that during my campaigns, when we have been, beginning to count the votes, I've asked the question, well, where can we find the votes? Where can we find the votes? I'm not saying go manufacture votes. I'm asking the question, Where's our best shot at getting what we need in order to win this thing? But nevertheless, it's Donald Trump. Donald Trump's a racist. We all know that, right? You don't have to have any proof of that because all you have to do is assert it and then it becomes truth willy-nilly. Again, unreality. Has Donald Trump mistreated anybody? Has he said anything to anybody that would suggest that he's got racial animus? No, no. But any little thing that he says that can be spun up into some kind of racial statement, of course, is done because they hate Donald Trump and what he represents. But this is cult-like thinking. Again, he's the enemy because he does not go along with them, and therefore you have to isolate him. You have to stay away from him. He is toxic. He is radioactive. Because that's the way cults behave. You know, Jehovah's Witnesses, again, which I don't mean to pick on them, but it's a cult that I know the most about because my mother was involved in it. They had something called disfellowshipping. So if you did something that the cult thought was wrong, you got disfellowshipped. And technically, when you were disfellowshipped, even your family was not supposed to speak to you. Now, I think that was more honored in the breach than in the observance, but nevertheless, that was the rule. I remember hearing it, they weren't supposed to, because, my siblings, one of it at least, got disfellowshipped, My mother wasn't supposed to be speaking to him, but of course it didn't work. But that's the denial of reality. That's the denial of rationality that cults do. And they're doing the same thing here on the issue of race. So we're supposed to believe that a black person who does not have to pass the same testing, show the same level of testing ability, does not have to show the same level of academic ability, does not have to show the same level of intellectual ability, should nevertheless be chosen for position because somewhere in the past, some ancestor that they might have had might not have had an opportunity because of the color of their skin. So therefore, you've got to reward an incompetent now in order to make up for something that happened 50, 100, 150, 200, 300 years ago. Does that make any sense at all? And again, if you are about to go into surgery and somebody says to you, you should be so proud. Or really what? The surgeon we are going to have operate on you is an affirmative action surgeon. He is the first black surgeon we've had at this hospital. Really? Well, okay. He doesn't have that much experience, and he has had a few patients die, but we don't want to attribute that to him because he's black. And it wouldn't be fair, that he's had more patients die than lived under his knife. But the thing that you should be so thrilled about is that you're going to be operated on by a black surgeon. You know what I'd say? You better go find me the best surgeon you have in this hospital, the best surgeon you have in this city, the best surgeon you have in this state, the best surgeon you have in this country. I don't want anybody operating on me who is not considered to be at the top of the profession. Period. No excuses. Oh, no, but this is different because no, I don't want different. I want competence. I want capability. Now, if you say to me, this person is Ben Carson, I say, well, praise God. Not because Ben Carson's black, but because I know Ben Carson's good. But that's the irrationality of cult-like thinking. You deny reality, you deny what's rational, and again, what does it lead to? Self-destruction and the destruction of others. So this woman, in leftist circles, she'll always be a hero because, she meets the criteria. What? She's black, she's a woman. What else do you need? But in terms of legal competence, which really doesn't matter in leftist circles, but in terms of legal competence, would anybody, if she were to resign and say, you know what, I'm going to go into private practice, would anybody who wants a good lawyer turn to her? I guess the people who are imbued with the same cult-like thinking as she is would. I wouldn't. I wouldn't trust her with anything significant because I don't believe the woman's competent. I mean, you are a prosecutor and you don't know that your transactions with a man that you are sleeping with and that you've given a $600,000 gig to are going to be scrutinized, that those transactions are going to be scrutinized, and that if you're really being honest and you're really on the up and up, you want to make sure that you've dotted every I and crossed every T. If you're too stupid to know that, why in the world would I want to entrust you with any of my legal affairs? But see, the cult-like thinking says, oh, no, that doesn't matter. She's black. It's a woman. It's a black woman. Those are the magic words that make everything else irrelevant. But what does it lead to? Self-destruction and the destruction of others. Because the whole world that cares about competence and ability is looking at her and looking at this guy thinking, how did these two buffoons end up in these gigs? I mean, well, we know how, but I mean, is that what we've come to now? Which is why I will say repeatedly, the whole notion of race norming, you all know what race norming is, that basically where you happen to be an American of European ancestry, I happen to be an American of African ancestry. We both take a test for some job or some entry into some school, and you have to get an 85, but because I'm black, I only have to get a 70. Because after all, it's not fair to hold me to the same standard that somebody holds you. I can't tell you how much I abhor that thinking. It just disgusts me to the core. Because in the end, what it really says is those poor people are inferior and there's nothing you can do to make them equal. So let's just pat them on the head and treat them like they are anyway. It undermines everything the civil rights movement should have been about, because it should have been about opening up the doors of opportunity for people to compete on the same level as anybody else. And to work and to develop, to strive, to grow, so that you can stand tall and look yourself in the mirror and say, I've earned what I've got. Nobody gave it to me. Like I'm some kind of handicapped idiot. Well, we know they can't meet our standard. Let's just be nice to them. Yeah, let's call him a doctor too. Because we know he failed chemistry and we know he failed physiology, or got a D or whatever. But let's treat him the same way we treat this person who got an A+ and all of that. Because after all, his ancestors came here as slaves and all that. We are surrounded by a cult that has poisoned our culture, captured the minds of our people. So let me get into this a little bit. And then I got one more issue. I got time. I got one more issue I want to get into. As you all know, I'm just basically, I know 45 minutes is about my timing. So I know all of you can't stay with me, but you can always go back and catch any part of the program that you missed. Look, the human mind, okay? I really believe that the human mind is a spiritual organism. So that's why we will still have mind when we leave our bodies. But that spiritual organism, while we are in the flesh, while we are in these bodies, operates through a physiological organ called the brain. Okay? And that brain is connected to the mind, and effects on the brain, impact on the brain affect the mind. All right, am I making sense? Because when you and I drop this robe of flesh, we're not going to end our thinking. But we will be thinking with pure mind, and we will not have a brain per se through which our thoughts are filtered and expressed. That's the physical organ that we need in this life in order to think. Now, I just want to lay that predicate, because here's what I want to get to. The brain is just like any other physical object. When you impact it hard enough, long enough, whether physically or mentally, it changes. It responds to the pressure. It responds to the impact. It responds to the beating. It responds to the constant drumbeat of an idea, of a thought. And so what is happening in our culture right now, through the mainstream media, through the colleges and universities, through pretty much every communication mechanism around us, except the ones that are controlled by conservatives, and even a lot of those are not really Christian, is that they are constantly beating on the minds of the American people. You must think a certain way. You must think a certain way. You all have seen the compilations of the various leftist media that call themselves mainstream, the alphabet media, both, in terms of all the homosexual and all this crazy stuff they believe in. But, the ABC, CBS, the Communist News Network, the Marxist Socialist No Brains channel, MSNBC. And you see that they're all repeating the same phrases. They're all stating the same ideas. I mean, as if a script was sent out to them all to say, use this phrase. The different organizations, different reporters, different anchors. Now, some people would say, well, that's a conspiracy, and maybe it is. But I really believe that you don't need to have a conspiracy where you have the same spirit. Like, I may go somewhere and I'm planning to teach on such and such a thing. The preacher says, wow, I've been teaching on that all month. Why? It's not, we didn't talk, we didn't coordinate, but we are of the same Spirit, the Holy Spirit. And He is moving through us. Well, people who are of the devil are of the same spirit too. The wicked spirit, the evil spirit. And He is working through them. And He is coordinating through them. And they are all of the same mindset. But they then take that mindset and they propound it and 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 propound it until people are brainwashed and don't even know they're being brainwashed. Because they hear the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. They may already be inclined to accept it. That's what a cult does. That's why a cult has to isolate people. That's why they want to get people away from others. That's why they want to get them into a silo, into a compound, so they can pound away at their brain until it conforms to the unreality and the irrationality that the cult wants them to buy into. That's what's happened in our country. We got a bunch of brainwashed people in the United States of America right now, and they don't even know it, which is the best way to do it. Is you tell people we're going to brainwash you, what do? They resist. But you don't tell them that. You just keep pounding away, knowing that the brain is malleable, okay? And the mind, therefore, is malleable. That's why when we leave this life, when we drop this robe of flesh, when we stand before God, everything will be crystal clear. But for those who have chosen against Jesus Christ, it's going to be too late. But they will see very clearly how wicked and evil and sinful they are. They will see it. But it won't do them any good. Because their brain will no longer be there as the filter through which to see the world. and all of the junk that's been put in it. You know, they say the brain grows different synapses, so you know, that habits get lodged in the brain, in the pleasure centers of the brain and that kind of thing, and the brain wants to keep doing whatever it's done. Well, when you separate from your brain, when your mind is separated from your brain, then you see all of that clearly. But if you have not chosen Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, it's not going to do you any good. When you stand before God, you're going to see it all very, very clearly. And of course, those of us who have chosen Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, we've not only been born again, but we've been transformed by the renewing of our minds to prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So when we see things clearly, it'll be in complete agreement with our spirit, the born again spirit that we have, and there will be no incongruity. There will be no conflict. But for the people who then see things clearly, who chose sin rather than God and his righteousness, they're going to see the conflict immediately, starkly, clearly, and they're going to just shake their heads and say, uh-oh, I'm in trouble now. Just like the criminal who goes out and does some heinous act and thinks he won't get caught until he stands before a judge who's sentencing him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, or as we used to do, and some, just 1 or 2 states still do, or to death. Uh-oh. This didn't quite work out the way I hoped it would. But it's because of the choice that they made. So I said all that simply to say, again, this cult-like thinking is running rampant. We can't reason people out of this. Just like you can't, you see somebody who's a member of a cult, you can't logically, they have to be deprogrammed. And what does that mean? That means you've got to put equal or greater pressure on the brain for a sustained period of time to overcome the impact that the cult-like brainwashing or the cult brainwashing has had on their brain in order for them to begin to see reality. I saw a documentary of this young lady who got captured, kidnapped by a man who was masquerading as some kind of some kind of agent for artists, and she had a gift of art, and he was supposed to be taking her to some kind of thing, but in actuality, he was a pedophile, and he absconded with the girl. Well, they disappeared, and he actually had the girl for years, and she wasn't a baby when he took her. She was old enough to know this was not her father, that she'd been taken from her parents. But when they finally found the girl, they ultimately did find her. When they finally found the girl and arrested him, guess what she was saying? What are you doing with my daddy? Why are you taking away my daddy? Well, he wasn't her daddy. And when they took her back and she looked at her parents, she just was in complete confusion. Like, what? It took her a while to realize her brain had been altered to accept this kidnapper as her father and to reject her own family that she knew and lived with and loved. That's what happens when the brain is pounded against. So what has to happen? You got to be separated from that brainwashing, and you got to get reprogrammed. You got to have impact on you. That's why we've got to have our own means of communication. That's why we've got to cry loud and spare not. That's why we've got to take no prisoners when it comes to propounding the truth. Because if we don't, we're going to surrender our country to a bunch of brainwashed people who are going to lead us down the path of destruction. Well, they're already doing it, aren't they? They're already doing it. Okay. Let me get to 2 other quick things, and then I'll be done. Wow, can I get to both of these? Let me try. I've got several things that I do, but I'm starting something called the Save America Project. I've started it already. The Save America Project has got a 2-pronged approach. One approach is through STAND, and that is impact the people. Save America, impact the people. What do I mean? All that cult-like thinking I just talked about, get out there and tell people the truth. And I've got two groups that we're focusing on. Evangelical voters, well, I say Christian voters, because evangelical is kind of a term of art, but I use it to really just talk about, in the political sphere, talk about Christian voters. But to let them know that you cannot allow these leftists to convince you not to vote for Donald Trump because Donald Trump's a bad man and Donald Trump's a sinner and blah, 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 blah. Look, I am a born-again believer. I'm filled with the Spirit of God. I love the Lord. I know I'm on my way to heaven. I don't have any doubt about it. And I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, and I don't have any conscience pangs or any issues with it because I know the man's track record. He's not perfect, but I know his track record. And so through the nonprofit, we're going to focus on issues. Faith, not a candidate, but through the nonprofit, faith, family, the rule of law, educational choice, not having the security and safety and economic well-being of the American people undermined by illegal immigration, which is destroying our culture. It's destroying it even as we speak. That's the cult-like thinking. It's self-destructive and destructive of others. So the nonprofit is going to focus on those issues, okay? And we're going to be targeting Christian voters and black voters. Christian voters because they're the base of any hope for transformation in this country, and black voters because the left uses them. Most of the black voters are Christians, but the left uses them and keeps them brainwashed into voting for people who disagree with, in fact, fight against, are enemies of everything the Bible teaches, pretty much. Oh, they'll pay a little homage to the poor, but they don't care about the poor either. So that's one prong. Save America, impact the people. The other prong, there's no logo up here for it, is through our PAC, Save America PAC. Now, Save America PAC is a super PAC. It is an independent PAC. But the project for Save America is Save America, elect Donald Trump. Save America, elect Donald Trump. And with the PAC, we're going to be focused on reaching the same groups, Christian voters, black voters, and explaining to them the lies that the left is going to tell about Donald Trump to try to get Christian voters to turn against him and not vote for him, erode that base. And they're going to say to black voters, Donald Trump is a racist, don't vote for him, he hates you, blah, 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 blah. And I, as the leader of Stand Foundation, Inc., and Stand America PAC, I've developed a program to say to those constituencies, you're being lied to. It's not true. Here's the truth. And to explain to them what Donald Trump did for America, and including the black community when he was president, and explain to them the issues that are at stake here, and how, as Christians, we must be faithful to the truth of God's word rather than being faithful to a political party or political figure. Like Joe Biden, who is a demonic figure. Joe Biden hates God. He hates God. Yeah, I said it because he does. I don't care what he calls himself. He calls himself Catholic all he wants. He hates God. He hates everything the Bible represents. He hates everything Christianity represents. He has no interest in that, except to use it where he thinks he can politically. So I'm asking for your help with the Save America Project. You can give at standamerica.us, or you can give at standamericapac.us. One has the PAC.us at the end of it, and the other is just the nonprofit. That's it. That's the logo up there for the nonprofit. The Stand America PAC logo is very similar, except it's got PAC in the logo instead of the way that one looks right now. But the logo is the same because they're sister organizations. They just have two different roles, and we have to keep a firewall between them because Stand America, Stand Foundation can't support any candidate. Not me, not Donald Trump, not anybody else. But the PAC can independently, but we won't be coordinating with Donald Trump. We'll be doing this on our own. We've done this in past years to great effect. We've spent thousands of dollars advertising in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in Virginia, in North Carolina, in Georgia, and we're going to do the same thing this year. These are battleground states, and we're going to do the same thing, except this time we're planning to do television. So in the past, we spent a couple $100,000 doing this. This time, I'm intending to spend $5 million. $5 million. Now, the bad news is I don't have $5 million. The good news is you do. So I need you to give. I need you to give, because that's what it's going to take. This is for all the marbles, folks. We cannot afford to allow this country to be governed by these Marxists, leftists, socialists, secularists who are going to destroy our country if we give them leeway. We've got to stop them, and we can't stop them with bullets and bombs. That's not what I'm advocating. We got to stop them with ballots. They're going to try to manufacture ballots. We got to get the real ones out there. Okay? One other quick thing. And this is so important. I know I've saved it for last, but Bob Good is a good friend of mine, and apparently a night or two ago he went to an event for Donald Trump, and he was not allowed in because he became a DeSantis supporter. Before DeSantis dropped out, he was supporting DeSantis. Now, Bob Good is the chairman of the Freedom Caucus now, which is a very important, powerful position in the House of Representatives, but he was turned away because he was not supporting Donald Trump. He supported Ron DeSantis. Bob Good is a friend of mine. As you all know, I never said anything against Donald Trump. I didn't, because I was running myself. I certainly didn't make a choice. I made clear the candidates I couldn't support, and I also made clear that there were only two that were even in the running as far as I was concerned, based on their track record. DeSantis, who's only got a track record in the state of Florida, and Donald Trump, who's got a track record as President of the United States. Now, we can't be divided, folks. For the people who supported DeSantis or anybody else, except for Nikki Haley, I don't know what she's doing. I mean, she is on a real suicide mission. I don't mean that literally, of course, but political suicide. We can't be divided. I've said this every time I've run in a primary. When the primary is over, it's over. And by the way, the primary is over. Donald Trump has won the nomination for president on the Republican side. Period. Nikki Haley hasn't gotten the revelation yet. And she may not get it even after she gets completely destroyed in her own home state. But at some point, she better get the revelation. She's got Democrats voting for her. So she'll get a gig at MSNBC, I'm sure. But I told you a long time ago I didn't trust her. I told you a long time ago I could never vote for her. And I think my sentiment, although at that time she looked more kind of mainstream, my sentiment, I think, is being proved to have been right. She's just completely off the wall and has no convictions whatsoever, because Donald Trump is going to be the nominee for the Republican Party. And if we have anything to do it, we ought to all be rallying to try to make sure that Donald Trump becomes the next president of the United States. But we can't divide against each other. We can't be angry with each other. We can't be hateful toward each other because somebody picked another candidate. But it's over now, okay? DeSantis is out. It's over now. I have friends who supported DeSantis. I have friends who supported Trump. It doesn't matter now. We ought to all be rallying behind Donald Trump. Period. End of story. And not fighting with each other. Oh, well, you supported DeSantis. I don't like you. I mean, I've seen that stuff happen. It is so, it hurts the cause. It hurts the cause. The cause is saving America, not punishing people who didn't see it the way you saw it. So I'll end with that. A call for unity. Unity in the body of Christ. Unity on the conservative side of the ledger. Yes, unity in the Republican Party, which I'm still a marginal member of. So God bless each and every one of you. I hope this has been thought-provoking and helpful for you. And we're just going to keep fighting because I know, again, I know what the outcome is. I've read the beginning of the book. I've read the middle of the book. I've read the back of the book. I've read the whole book. And there's only one word that you can write on all of that: victory. Hallelujah. So look, you stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.